Do you agree that this phone call potentially is itself a tipping point? And if it is, what change should it make in the British government's attitude to Israel and indeed behaviour towards Israel?
It does appear to be a tipping point, and I think, as per your point, it's devastating that it's taken 6 months for us to get to a point where it appears that the international community is able to influence Israel's perpetration of this war. This has been the challenge over the last 6 months, is that as I've gone around the world, so many people have said to me, well, why can't you force Israel to do this? Well, Israel's our ally. We do not control them. And it has been the point that the phrase you have heard from interlocutor after interlocutor is Israel is not listening. That does appear to have changed. So the priority for now needs to be very much making sure that aid is getting in. That famine must be stopped. We do need an immediate ceasefire, and it's frustrating to see Biden now throwing his weight behind a ceasefire when only a few weeks ago, when the UN Security Council resolution was passed, they were suggesting that it was non-binding in some way. And so actually America has allowed the ceasefire not to be brought in as comprehensively as it should be because they did not throw their weight behind it properly. We need to work with the Israelis on what their collateral damage percentage is so that we drive down the number of civilian casualties. We need to make sure we do not see the sort of decisions we saw that allowed the World Kitchen to be attacked. Let's be very clear. A chain of command made the decision that it was acceptable to kill 6 humanitarian workers to kill 1 reported operative. Humanitarian workers have protected special status under international law.
The Israelis say it was a mistake, though. Do you not accept that it might have been a mistake?
So one strike could be a mistake, but when you are perpetrating an airstrike, there is a complicated legal structure. If you had done one airstrike, so first of all, the car was clearly demarcated as a humanitarian car. On top of it, there was a sign that made very clear what it was. You can see it from the skies. Secondly, they had provided their GPS coordinates and told them where they'd be. It is one thing to strike one car, and then you might say, well, let's look at exactly what exactly this vehicle is. But they then went on to triple tap, car by car by car. And we should also reiterate that this follows the bombing of medical aid for Palestinians in January, for which we still have no explanation, and for which 4 British doctors, very luckily, were not harmed. So unfortunately, the problem is, and this goes to the point of the question that was asked a moment ago, this is something that is happening on a daily basis in terms of the attacks on humanitarians, and we are not seeing this outcry when it's about Palestinian volunteers.
And if it is, and if what you say is right, then what should be the policy implication for the British government? Because it's interesting, the Americans didn't talk overtly, did they, about arms sales, reducing or even ending arms sales. What should Britain be saying publicly now about that?
So I believe we have no choice but to suspend arms sales, and it's important the public understands this isn't a political decision, as some seem to want to present it as. Legal advice is advisory, so the government can choose to reject it, but UK arms export licences require a recipient to comply with international humanitarian law, and that's why emergency handbrakes, for example, exist in change of circumstances. And I think on IHL, it is important to reiterate that ministers were unable to answer when I asked in the chamber whether Israel was demonstrating a commitment to IHL. They said they had a capacity, not they were, with the issue around the switching on of water and of aid deliveries. And I would point out that you had Suella Braverman on earlier this week saying that she'd seen trucks of aid going in. That is not somehow a defence that enough aid is going in. It is preposterous as a defence. The problem is the volume that is going in. I'd also reiterate something that's been overlooked is the bombing of the embassy. Diplomatic premises and diplomatic and consular staff have a special status under international law.
This is the Iranian embassy in Syria.
In Syria, it is indeed, and the Israelis bombed that, and we have to be very cautious because the moment we or our allies break these rules, it makes all of us vulnerable, it makes our embassies vulnerable, it makes our people in Iran
I suppose what the Israelis would say is that it does the opposite. They're fighting battles on behalf of all of us against Iran, which threatens people, including, it seems, potentially people in Britain, and certainly Hamas, which threatens all Jews everywhere. And actually, this does, in spite of what you say about the legal advice being legal and not political, the risk is that all of this, particularly on the arms sales, simply sends a political message that we, the wider West, are not willing to back Israel, and indeed others. They'll find arms elsewhere. So it'll have no practical effect, but a very big diplomatic and political one.
Israel faces a heinous enemy who we want to help them defeat. But I think it's really important that we don't allow this narrative to come out. There are some seeking to capture and create a monopoly on what it means to be a friend of Israel, what it means to support Israel to defeat Hamas. A friend to Israel is someone who wants to see the people of Israel safe, prosperous, and secure for the long term, not living under threat. But there are attempts to stipulate that a requirement for unadulterated loyalty to the Netanyahu government is what looks like friendship. This is the most ultra-Orthodox government of my lifetime, and even former presidents of Israel, such as President Rivlin, are saying that Netanyahu is driving away and creating international ostracism. There is nothing anti-Israeli, much less anti-Semitic, in taking a tougher line for the Netanyahu government. And the reality is it is how Israel prosecutes this that is the problem we have.
Right.
We support them in their right to self-defense, but they are making themselves and us less safe in the way that they are doing it.